She lost color in her lips and she lost color in her face. And I just knew right then that something was wrong. Hey.
Hi.
He is officially 2 weeks old, which I feel like now Sam and I are in a good place, or at least I'm in a good place to tell you guys what happened.
Screw Sam.
Well, she doesn't really remember a lot. I remember everything. It's like a movie. And I feel like I had PTSD. I still feel like I might, but like I feel like we're good 2 weeks later, you know, now that I see how fine she is. Anyways.
This is Wilder.
this is Wilder.
Wilder
William. And he was born 2 weeks ago, and we want to tell you guys everything, what happened. So Sam can start because till she doesn't basically remember.
Yeah.
And then go ahead.
So it was August 14th, and my water broke, which was super weird to see. We were actually talking with Alyssa's mom about, you know, how with all her kids, like her water never broke, how my water with Avery didn't break, and all of a sudden I feel like a trickle, and I'm like, oh, okay, whatever, normal. And then just
it was a gush. Avery was standing right next to my mom, and I was sitting on the couch, and
I was actually sitting. I was on the ball, oddly enough, on the hardwood floor.
And all of a sudden, it was like 6 p.m. Avery was about to eat dinner, and I was like, and you were like, okay. Can someone give me a towel?
Alyssa, the look of panic on her face. She instantly was like...
And then Sam was like, she said, can I get a towel? And then she said, Alyssa, go figure out what to do with the hospital bag. I grabbed like 5 pieces of mismatched clothing. It was like not great.
Like 1 pair of underwear.
Yeah. Avery, you know what? I feel really bad because it was kind of chaotic, and like Avery was a little like, what just happened?
Yeah.
And we just weren't expecting.
She didn't like freak out or anything.
No.
Like, she wasn't like screaming or crying or anything. Yeah. I think it was more or less just like everybody else around her was like, kind of like, oh shit, and panicking.
And then we called Sam's sister to come over to help my mom put Avery down because we were about to leave, and Avery at least.
And Alyssa's mom had only been here a few days at that point and hadn't put Avery down to bed. Like we had done it. So.
And like we wanted like 2 familiar faces, or at least a familiar face. Anyways, so then the mismatched hospital bag got
tossed everything in the car,
and I guess we said, okay, we're gonna go, and I feel like we didn't have time to really like do what we had planned on doing with like Avery. Like, okay, Avery, like we're gonna go, we'll see you in the morning, or we'll see you like in a couple of days. And it was just chaotic.
We were gonna like explain to her more or less like how it was going to be. But yeah, we weren't expecting it.
Yeah.
And my due date wasn't until August 31st, which by the time you're seeing this, maybe it'll be then at that point. But
and then so we drove to the hospital, but we had no idea that you really aren't supposed to go to the hospital right when your water breaks. You're kind of supposed to wait until like contractions get closer. But in
our defense, like every time we've ever seen like water breaking has been like on television, and like it's just kind of like it looks like maybe someone just like poured a little bit of like a small bucket out, you know, and everyone's just like, oh my god, my water broke, whatever. Whereas mine, it was just like flood. I felt like there was nothing else left in me, and like my initial thought was like, oh my god, there's nothing in there with him right now. Like,
so what is he doing? We just didn't know what to do. So anyways, we got to the hospital, and then what happened from there?
They admitted us, they checked me, and I wasn't dilated at all.
She was thick, high, not dilated, nothing.
Yeah, I was contracting, but it wasn't to the point where like it was dilating me or whatnot. So they kind of just monitored me overnight. And I forget if it was early the next morning on the 15th or like midnight, whatever.
I think it was
the night before. They started giving me, that's right. They started giving me this medicine to help dilate.
It's kind of like makes her dilate and makes her cervix like thinner. It makes her more effaced.
that's what it was.
It was basically to get the party started without the Pitocin, because the Pitocin can cause stress to him if all of her shit is still
Pitocin is like, what they use to like help you like contract and you know all that.
And then I think the next morning they checked you. They said, okay, we're good to start Pitocin. And I want to say that was like, I'm sure we said it in the birth vlog, maybe it was like 10:30, maybe 9, I don't really know, something like that. Started on Pitocin, and then around maybe like 12:45, 12:50 maybe. I think because you were only pushing for half an hour.
Yeah.
So around then, they said, Sam was like, I can't not push. And so...
Well, so I got the epidural first.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Yeah,
I
got the epidural, which was kind of interesting because they had to stick me twice. The first time, I don't know if like I moved or like maybe she didn't put it where it needed to be or whatnot, but I felt like I
can tell on Sam's face this was not as enjoyable as it was with
Avery. With Avery it was totally fine. I'm always super nervous with anything with the back just because of my dad's back injuries and whatnot. So like anything with the back, like I'm instantly like hyper aware and whatnot. But she got it in, whatever, it started flowing. I don't even really think it like fully kicked in.
No,
to be honest.
Sam's body just doesn't react to epidurals. We've realized with him and Avery, just kind of like she's numb, but not to the point where she can't walk. It's weird.
But like this time around, like I started feeling a lot more.
Okay, so 12:45 hit. Sam was like, I'm not pushing anymore.
Yeah, but I was like, I have to.
Yeah, but his hand was right here, and when you push a baby out, you has to be like basically you can't have any arms or legs. Or
Hands
anything.
should be by the side.
Yeah, but he kept coming out like this, and so they kept trying to push his hand back in, but he just didn't. No matter what they did, he didn't do it.
Yeah.
So,
at one point, the doctor like tried to like push his hand back, and like she was like, he grabbed my finger.
Yeah,
which is so
weird.
But
yeah, no. So she was like, I'm pushing, and then it was about a half an hour of pushing.
Yeah,
he technically did still come out like this
with his hand, kind of.
But
he also kind of got stuck because he was like moving his head too. So like she was trying to like adjust him, and it was it was very painful.
Yeah,
I felt a lot more of it than what I did with Avery. With Avery, it was just more so like uncomfortable pressure. This was like uncomfortable pressure as well as pain.
From my perspective, Sam just kept saying like, I can't do this anymore. I can't do this anymore.
Yeah,
please, like, just let it stop. Please just let it stop. But
well, because it was also like she kept saying like, oh, he's right there, like you're doing so great, you're doing so great. And in my mind, I'm like, oh, awesome, like I'm gonna push one last time and he's gonna be here, whatever. And then I would, and she was like, you did so great. And I'm like, okay, great, where is he?
But from my perspective, the doctor was physically stretching Sam, like physically doing it.
Okay,
and then,
TMI.
And then Sam was just like,
hurt. Yeah,
Sam
it was crazy.
Not okay. So like, but I was like, Sam's pain tolerance is pretty high. Like once he comes out, that was my thought process. Once he comes out, you are going to be okay.
Yeah,
like that was my thought process. And
then, honestly, it was. He was born at 1:17 p.m.
His head finally popped through, and then the rest of his body just came right there.
Yeah, and I, like, at that point, like, once you do actually give birth and, like, the baby is there, like, you don't feel it anymore, and I didn't, and it was fine. It was totally great. They put him on me, and I cried, which was kind of funny because I didn't cry with Avery, and I was like, oh, I'm totally gonna cry, whatever. But I don't know what it was about, like, maybe because my adrenaline was just pumping and just so much shock.
Sam kept telling me, oh my god, he's so small, I couldn't see. Anyway, so he came out, and then I got to cut the umbilical cord, and everything was great, and then the doctor left, and like the nurse was just it was just like the prep. It was like they told us you're going to be in this room for 2 hours, and they don't weigh him or do anything for the first hour. They just allow her to do like skin to skin. Yeah, and then
which I had like just started doing, and like I had tried to get him to latch, and he kind of wasn't getting it. Which, I mean, he was early, and they said that like those skills just aren't like 100% developed at that point. But like, as I was like trying to get him to latch and whatnot, I started just not feeling great.
And I could see Sam literally, it was the same thing as when she passed out at Disneyland when she was pregnant with Avery. She lost color in her lips, and she lost color in her face, and I just knew right then that something was wrong. I just knew it.
Yeah, I started feeling like this, like it's weird, like an outer body like feeling, like I'm not physically in my body. It feels very cold and very like dizzy.
Yeah,
and
like my whole thought process was like, okay, I'm gonna get her some soda. I'm gonna get her something with sugar. Like I think maybe just like her blood pressure just like dropped. Maybe she hadn't eaten at that point in like 24 hours or something like that.
Almost like 24 hours because we hadn't eaten dinner the night before.
Yeah, so I was like, okay, I'm gonna get her something sugar. I'm gonna try to get her something to eat. I'm just trying to get her something to get that color back in her face. That's just what I do in Disneyland.
But I started to feel that, and instantly like he wasn't latching, and I was just kind of like, I'm feeling this like very odd feeling. I don't trust myself holding him right now. And I looked at Alyssa and I'm like, you need to take him.
Yeah, and then it just hit the fan. So then we hit we hit it, or the nurse hit it, like the button to be like, hey, can you have the doctor come back in?
Yeah.
And I felt like we just kept having to like advocate that like Sam did not feel well.
Yeah.
It was like once really shit was hitting the fan, they really took it serious, but I felt like I kept having to say, no, like this is not right. Like this, what I'm seeing is physically not what I know like Sam to look like. And even the nurse was like, oh yeah, like her lips look a little pale, whatever. But then she was bleeding like a lot, and then they kept pushing on her stomach, and I'm like, this is so traumatic. Like she's feeling everything. The epidural was out at that point.
Yeah, and they had taken, the cord was still in my back, but they had unhooked it, so I wasn't able to like get additional epidural. So I was feeling,
they literally kept pushing out, like,
which is what they typically do in general after you give birth, is like they want to make sure that like everything is, for the most part, like out and whatnot, like once like you've delivered the placenta and all that.
But yeah, no, so they kept pushing on her stomach, and every single time they pushed on her stomach, like I'm talking football-sized blood clots were coming out, and it was just like, it was a lot. Sam, every single time they pushed on Sam's stomach, she would like be like, no, please stop, please stop, please stop, and she would like scream, and then it was like 2 hours of that, right? And then at some point, and that's literally when I was like, I need to have Allie come here, because at this point they're telling me, okay, you need to go, be with Wilder. But then I would see Sam, and I would feel like, I literally felt this like, it sucks, but I felt like I don't care right now about this. I need to be with this. Like that's literally what my thought process was. Like it's not like I actually didn't care, but it was like, he was fine, and I knew he was fine, but they kept being like, you need to you need to be there when they check his weight, you need to be there when they check his thing. But I'm like, she's not the same color that she was when she came into this hospital, like, and I just knew something was wrong. So then I literally called Sam's sister. I said, you gotta get here. She's like, I will be there in 35 minutes. Then I went out and to meet her, and it looked for like a half a second, literally like half a second, it looked like Sam.
Are you okay?
Yeah, no.
I feel like you're gonna start crying.
No.
You're starting to tear up a little bit.
For like half a second, it literally was like, or for like, maybe not half a second, it was like, I feel like 10 minutes. And it was like, okay, maybe Allie come in here, like, she didn't actually need to, because I felt like by the time she got there, okay.
When Allie walked in the room, at that point, someone had given me Wilder again, and I had him, he was next to me, and I remember Allie coming in, and she was just like, oh my god, he's so little, whatever, and like, and whatnot, and she held him, and right after, like, I don't know, I think it was maybe like 2 minutes after like you handed him to Allie or something, like I started feeling instantly over again.
And she lost even, it was like before I was like, that's not the color of Sam. It was like even worse. She was literally this color. She was white as a ghost. And I think that's when at that point they were doing a bunch of things. They were like still pushing on Sam's stomach. The screams I still hear of Sam, like it will never not be in my mind. The screaming, this doctor guy had his entire hand and arm and was like scraping like around your uterus / like everything, and like again, football-sized blood clots coming out. They just kept scraping. They got an ultrasound. They were trying to figure out what is going on, because it was either that she was not clotting or clotting too much or something like that, and they didn't really explain it too much to me, which is why I was glad Allie was there, because she was able to basically translate what they were saying.
I feel like at one point I heard them say something along the lines of like they were thinking that potentially a piece of the placenta might have still been in there.
They did say that.
But they also, from what I remember, were saying, like, no, looked like it was whole, you know?
Yeah, no, and I saw her placenta, and it was, like, fine. It was truly just, like, a blood clot between, like, her uterus and some other organ that they literally could not, like, get out. And then Allie was, like, I think standing next to you when all of a sudden Sam's blood pressure dropped to 60/40. And if you're not a doctor or a nurse or anything in the medical field, a normal blood pressure is like 120/80. That is our normal.
My typical is 120/70.
So hers literally dropped to 60/40, which is like, you're about to see the light. You know what I mean? Like, you were literally like not okay. And that's when I knew it was like really bad. One, because of that number, and two, because I could tell on Allie's face that she was like, oh shit. That's when they called a rapid response and a crash cart, which I was like, I know those terms from Grey's Anatomy.
I watched Grey's Anatomy.
And I was like, I knew that wasn't good. So then there was like,
I remember like bits and pieces of this.
You kept saying that you felt like you knew people were talking, but you heard mumbling almost.
Yeah, because I was like, it was like almost like blurry vision, and like almost like this sounds gonna sound really stupid, but like blurry hearing.
Yeah,
like almost like you're listening to someone talk underwater. You know.
Yeah, and then
I remember that like Allie had gotten there, and they were like, okay, we're gonna take Wilder out of the situation.
So they actually asked me. They said, do you want us to take him to the nursery? And I felt so guilty saying, yeah, I think they need to. And then I was like, hey, Allie, like, do I go with him? Do I stay with Sam? And she was like, I can go with him. You could stay here or whatever. And I was like, I feel like I need to go with him. But then I literally went to him, and then I said, no, I need to go back. And then I went back, and then...
Well, because I just remember you came over. You came over to me, and you don't cry.
Yeah, it was scary. Like, it was literally so scary, and I just kept thinking, like, this is bad. Like, this is really bad. And then I kept having texts, and like, it was like a whole thing. But it was basically a lot of the same stuff for like the next couple hours. It was a lot of the same stuff. And then finally, I literally asked like so many times. I said, can we get her blood? Can we get her blood? Can we get her blood? Because I knew that like she was losing a lot of blood, and they just kept telling me, no, it's normal. And apparently you have to get to a certain number before they can get you the blood. But then they finally got it, and they're like, oh, we rushed it. But I felt like, it literally felt like it was like 10 minutes from the time that they like called it. And they were like, no, it's rushed. Then they got her a unit of blood. Then it wasn't going in fast enough. So then they got that machine. I don't know what the machine is. It basically gets the blood into her faster. So then they got a second unit of blood. And then she ended up getting 3 units of blood. And I'm telling you, by the time she got the blood into her body, it was like physically like Sam like came back to life. It was like she was fine, but it was like 7 hours of that. This is like the rough story, because I feel like there's so many parts that I'm like, I mean, I can tell you more parts, but it's a lot of the same stuff that just kept happening. But like,
it didn't feel like that long.
No, it didn't.
But I also was like barely there.
Yeah, but
I like remember like bits and pieces of like hearing things. But like one thing I do remember is like I kept wanting to close my eyes.
Yeah, that's Sam. Sam kept like wanting to close her eyes, and Allie was like,
Allie was yelling at me to keep my eyes open, and one of the nurses or whatever. Like, I vividly remember, like, being like, I'm literally going to die and leave Alyssa and these 2 kids. It was terrifying.
Yeah, but it's really weird, because she had that thought, and she told me that after. And even though I knew it was, like, terrifying, and it was, like, really, really, really bad, I don't know, I think it was the doctor. I literally think it was the doctor who made me feel like, even though it was scary, she made me feel like, okay, like, this is terrifying, but Sam is going to be okay.
They were so great. The entire, like, The entire team was so great. The doctor that delivered him, that like stayed through like
The
all
whole
of it,
thing.
was just such like a like even though like physically delivering him was like so painful and stuff, like she just had like this calming presence about her that like truly made all the difference. For sure.
Yeah. So that is the very traumatic story. This is actually the first time Sam has cried about it, so this is kind of weird. Not in like a bad way, but weird, just because I don't think she's like, I think hearing it now, she's kind of like, oh shit, that actually happened. I think it's like the realization that it happened. But yeah, that is the very traumatic story of how she gave birth and he got stuck. And but now, look at, she's glowing. Look at her. She's back in her regular clothes.
I'm fine.
She's
yeah.
fine.
It was, they monitored my blood, like they kept taking blood work, and they would not let us leave labor and delivery until everything passed. I think they did like 2 rounds of like labs or something like that.
I think they actually did 3 rounds of labs. They checked every single thing inside and out.
Yeah.
And they would not let us leave unless they knew for a fact that if she went home, she would be fine. Yeah.
And they like, so what happens is like you're in labor and delivery, like in normal birth, like maybe like 2 hours after, you bond with the baby and whatnot, and then you are sent over into like the recovery portion of it. They would not let us go into the recovery portion until they crossed their T's and dotted their I's.
No, we didn't go over there, I want to say 10 hours after he was born.
Yeah, it was a while. It was like the middle of the night.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
And then they continued monitoring. And,
yeah. They're good. Everyone's good. And that is the traumatic story. And I really hope no one ever has to experience that from either side.
No. It's, I mean, you hear about stuff like that, but then like
you don't feel like it's going to happen to you.
Yeah.
Right? Hopefully you got the world's best doctors. So that's it.
And he's here and he's
great.
Healthy, and that's what matters. He's peaceful.
Yeah.
And one day we'll tell him when he's being a little shit.
Yeah. But here's Mr. Wilder. He's so cute. All right, say bye, guys. Bye.